Hello there.
Hello and welcome back to Star Wars Forever, and I'm here to catch up with and finish my thoughts on I was going to say the second half of Obi-Wan Kenobi, where it wasn't split into two parts, unlike the other shows I'm currently watching, slash have finished, Stranger Things and Better Call Saul. But the last three, the second half, the other three parts of that Kenobi show. So let's just get into it. Spoiler filled. I'm not going to go into too much detail, which kind of reflects my general enthusiasm of the show. I think I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it a lot when I was watching it. It hasn't stuck with me as much as I would have liked maybe for a show that I was quite well. I say I was quite excited for, but I was also very skeptical, and I'm happy to say for myself that. The skepticism was quashed by the end of the show. I'm happy with where the kind of final chips laid with the story when it was all said and done. And anyway, so the 4, 5, and 6 parts 4, 5, and 6. We had the episode where Obi-Wan and crew went in to save Leia from the Inquisitor's fortress, which is a really cool location, which is apparently shown first in the video game Jedi Fallen Order, which I played an hour of and never continued again. I think I've mentioned that before. It's for no real reason at all. It's just I don't know. I got distracted. Anyway, so I didn't quite get it's from the game that everyone was getting so excited about. Anyway, and then part 5 was the siege, where Obi-Wan is with all the people who are kind of protecting and trying to guide all the Force-sensitive people in the galaxy, kind of under the shroud of darkness and away from the prying eyes of the Empire and Vader and the Inquisitors, I guess. So the Inquisitors feel like the ground crew, They're the ones going out there seeking out these Force-sensitive people and kind of cutting them down pretty ruthlessly. Whereas Vader's more of the overlord of that section of the Empire, though he's still very much underneath the likes of Tarkin and Palpatine himself. Anyway, and so the fifth one is where, and I say this as if you need to know the story, you know exactly what happened, but it's just the general housekeeping and doing these kinds of reviews, I guess. But the siege episode where they kind of go to the planet where Obi-Wan is and he's trying to get off with all these people. Reva shows up, Vader shows up, big confrontation stuff, the big flashback that everyone was getting really excited about, and then finally part 6 is the culmination, the grand finale, the climax of the story. So episode 4 I liked. It was fun. We got to see Leia kind of holding her own against Reva, kind of mentally, which was really cool to see, and then Obi-Wan kind of like swimming underwater and to kind of sneak into the fortress and stuff. And it would have been cool to see him dressed up as a stormtrooper, but it would be a bit too on the nose, maybe. Like, I think that it would just kind of be like, see, like A New Hope. But, we get to see him cut down a few stormtroopers. You get to feel like Obi-Wan is in a groove in this episode. He's getting the saber moving again. He's getting a bit more confident. He's just been through that fight with Vader, and it's kind of been a big revelation for him in this story. But he's kind of healed up a bit. He was taken in by that kind of the crew, the team, who kind of guide the former Jedi or the Force sensitive people along the way or the path. Or the path is the way. I forget the woman's name. She's a decent character. The woman who kind of helps Obi-Wan in episode 3 and through to 4 and 5, and that whole crew felt like a kind of believable kind of freedom fighters unit. They weren't really the rebels, but they were kind of again fighting for something a little bit bigger. And we got to see Kumail Nanjiani's character come back again. I forget his character's name as well. It's been like 2 weeks since the show finished, but it was nice to see him again. He was kind of a fun little side character. And so, yeah, episode 4 was okay, and then Vader came in at the end and force choked Reva, and Reva's like, hey, I got a plan. And it's almost like Vader's like, I might use this plan in future movies, because he, very, very much kind of lets them go in Empire Strikes Back. Well, does he or doesn't he? Because that's the thing people have been talking about, especially with the 5th episode of the Obi-Wan show, where we see this ridiculous show of strength from Vader, where the ship with all the people is taking off and he just pulls it down with his hand and just rips the sides of the ship off. And then the ship, the kind of decoy ship, flies off anyway. And it kind of, people are, well, if he can do that, why couldn't he stop the Falcon in Empire Strikes Back on Hoth? And then people are saying, well, he let them leave. And then there's just like these things of like, we put a tracker on the ship. Well, it's like classic Star Wars stuff, right? But I will say, I really like the 5th episode. That kind of, it's kind of like where Obi-Wan's like, oh, the last thing they'll do is push for a siege. And then it's a siege, and you have the Empire, the Stormtroopers, and Reva on one side of this big blast door, and all of the good guys on the other side. And a really great scene where Obi-Wan and Reva kind of go for a little discussion, negotiation. The negotiations were short, and they talk through the door. So I really like the way that they staged that scene. It was really nice. And then we get the backstory of Reva, that she was a youngling on Coruscant, in Revenge of the Sith, and that she's actually out to go for Vader. And this is where Obi-Wan gets to kind of realize who Reva actually is and what her motivations are. And he kind of, tries to strike up a deal with her, or a plan at least. And she's like, I'm going to bring you to him. And he's like, no, I'm bringing him to you. Like, he knows that Vader's going to show up. He does. Big fight ensues, and we get this. At first you think, okay, this is where the Obi-Wan Vader, like, the real showdown is going to happen. But then they all escape. And so it's like, oh, well, what happens now? And then it's like, no, this is about Reva and Vader, and her trying to kill Darth Vader because she wants the revenge, and we then see that he actually stabbed her. Anakin, I guess he was Darth Vader at that point after he'd been christened by Palpatine, but we find out that it was actually the case that Anakin/Vader stabbed a very young Reva when she was a youngling, but she survived, and she pretended it's dark. She talks about how, when she talks to Obi-Wan, that like, when I was a kid, I was stabbed by Vader, and I pretended to be dead, and I just lay with the bodies of my friends until they grew cold. Like, it's horrible. I mean, yeah, some people are like, okay, they're going to shy away from or retcon. And Kevin Smith was talking about this, where he's like, I thought they were going to retcon that Anakin even killed younglings, and they were going to say that he, that he spared them, or something like that. And no, they double down on it. You actually see basically him stab this young girl. It's very brutal and violent. Well, it isn't shown to be brutal and violent, but the act is brutal and violent, and we are shown that fairly tastefully for what it is. And she goes for Vader, and they have this really cool fight where he is just like not even using a saber, he's just like ducking out of the way. But I love whoever was doing the stunts and the choreography for that, because he's not like spinning around, he's still lumbering. That's a key part of Vader, is you feel he's a bit like a tank. There's not a lot of agility there, but there's a lot of power and kind of explosiveness in his movements at times when he really needs to. A lot of power. And so he's like sidestepping, and it was a really cool fight. And then he stabs her again. Now this is the point of contention where it's like, okay, and then she lives again. So like, how does this person not die? And then people bringing up, well, if Qui-Gon got stabbed in the stomach and died straight away, how come Reva could survive it twice? And it's just like, I don't know, like, there was the story of that guy in real life who got like a butcher knife, slammed right down through his head, through his brain, through the skull, everything, and he survived. Sometimes things are survivable, and it's like the freakiest of things. So especially when we're talking about the world of Star Wars, I think it's permissible that someone could survive that. And then people were theorizing that Qui-Gon was ready to let go anyway. I don't know about that, but I do understand the frustration, because when you've shown one thing and then you do the same thing again, but the rules are slightly different, some people get confused by that. For me, it wasn't a problem, because it's like, it depends. Like, everyone is different, and every potentially fatal wound is different. So it all depends. Anyway, so I guess that's all I got to say about see, again, if I had done like episode by episode kind of thoughts, I might be able to give you more detail. And I feel like already this isn't a very good review. But it is again kind of reflective of my enthusiasm on it, which is like I really really liked it, but it wasn't something I was like, oh my god, I gotta make the video for it now, But I wanted to make this because I talked about the first 3 episodes. And of course, actually no, in episode 5 we had the flashback. Now that surprised me that not that they did a flashback, but they did an episode 2 flashback, and that they didn't really do the deepfake thing. Now people have said they see some digital trickery and maybe they did some smoothing, but you can really tell that's a 40-year-old Hayden Christensen playing a 19-year-old Anakin Skywalker, and it shows. He looks like, a 40-year-old dude. But for me, it's like, I would rather that than like some weird, waxy kind of de-aging thing. With like the Luke Skywalker stuff in Book of Boba Fett, it's like, you're removing like 40 years off this actor's kind of likeness, and so it's so far removed anyway that it's almost easier to kind of suspend your disbelief when it's something like, I mean, I don't know, maybe it would be easier if they just made Hayden's face look like he was 20, but I don't know, there's something, and again, one of the things people were bringing up to defend this was that this is, because this was Vader remembering this memory, and you kind of realize that, and I'm not sure maybe if they kind of infer that they're both remembering it, but it's definitely implied that Vader's the one who's thinking about this memory of them sparring in Coruscant in the Jedi Temple, which is a beautiful setting, by the way. But so he's thinking about like himself and as he might look then, I suppose. Which yeah, maybe, I guess. And Ewan certainly didn't look the way he did in Attack of the Clones, but sometimes I think you just focus on the performance. And one thing I've been watching lately is probably the best show I've ever seen, which is Better Call Saul. And in that show, we have flashbacks where characters are like 20 years younger, and you can tell that they're really not. And even just the base age of those actors, they're playing about 10 years younger from Breaking Bad timeline and storyline. And yeah, you can see that Jonathan Banks playing Mike Ehrmantraut, he looks more like 70 at a point in time where he's more like, 60 or whatever. And so it doesn't fully match up with Breaking Bad, but you just go along with it because of the performance and the story and the character. So for me, the flashback was really cool. And, I think a weird part of me with these Star Wars shows, and even the Marvel stuff a little bit, is that, I can only watch it in Disney Plus. And on Disney Plus, there's a very specific, 4K HDR color grade thing going on that is a little bit washed out at times. And with the Obi-Wan show, there's a lot of dark scenes. And so, I turn off all the lights and I still feel like I can see myself reflected in some of this murkiness. And if I could own it on Blu-ray, I don't know, I just feel like I would enjoy these things more. Even if I could see them in the cinema, I don't know. It's just one of those weird things where it almost doesn't feel as special because it's purely a streaming product, which seems weird, but that's just a whole other thing anyway. But I really liked the Reva expansion of her character and the duel with Vader, and of course the Grand Inquisitor showing up at the end there, very unceremoniously, and then the flashbacks were kind of cool. And then the woman who helped them in episode 3, she dies, which was, you could see that coming because, someone needs to die in this story because they're not going to kill off any of the other characters, right? Reva, I guess, was the main one who you thought maybe, but I had an inkling she'd stick around till the very end. And obviously she saw the hologram message, which clued her into Luke. And yeah, so and it also explained her being a youngling why she knows that Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader, because she was a youngling. She would see Anakin in the Jedi Temple, and when Darth Vader showed up, it was Anakin, so she knows. That was a really cool thing for me, because when it first was revealed that she knew, I was like, who the fuck is this person to know who Vader is? No one knows. They even, it just blew my mind. But I thought, well, the story isn't over yet, and so I didn't freak the fuck out like everyone else did. And go, how dare they go against? How dare they break canon and have this woman know? So they explained it. You just watch the whole thing, and then they'll explain it eventually. Hopefully, and in this case they did. So the final episode, Leia kind of gets shepherded off to kind of safety, and Obi-Wan goes down to face off with Vader on this planet. It's kind of like, I wish it had been a bit more interesting visually. I mean, it was different. It was kind of almost like an asteroid of a planet, really. And in a way, and again, I feel like if the lighting had been a little bit different, it wasn't so murky where you have to turn all the lights off and kind of like, if it feels like they're trying to hide the seams a little bit with some of the, how much they need to do in a short amount of time with the visual effects and things. But I just think that the Obi-Wan Vader duel from part 6 of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, for me, is one of the best Star Wars duels ever, psychologically, story-wise. And really what a duel is a story. Just two people throwing lightsabers at each other is a fight, kind of a duel. But for me, a duel, there needs to be this history or this like story between these two or more people, and everything about this was the story between them. Everything about it was the psychology behind it, and it was incredible. But the actual staging of it with just this murky little, I don't know what would you even call it, this little corridor of rocks. I don't know, just like this little rocky kind of, I don't know, nothing. Just, I can't even explain it. It's just this little sea of spindly rocks, on a dark planet or moon. It was just nondescript. The staging of it was nondescript, and I felt like it could have done with something a bit more epic and a bit more grand, and that would have just tipped it way over the edge for me. Something where you can see something, I don't know, and there was this concept art of them fighting, and it would look like it was fire in the background, which would have been more, a repeat of Revenge of the Sith, but something with a bit more flavor and punch to it, like staging wise, I think. But and also I do think they overdid it a teeny tiny bit with the super force powers when Obi-Wan's just like, come at me, bro, and just fires all these rocks at him, and that's when you get into like superhero territory. And I feel like that's like, if he can do that, then why are they even using their lightsabers? They should be throwing everything at each other. And they've done that since Empire Strikes Back. But it was a little bit, it was definitely like an oh my god moment. But once the dust settled, literally, it was a bit like, well, And I saw a behind the scenes clip of when Obi-Wan force pushes Vader and he flies back into a rock. And they did that for real. The stuntman took a massive, slam into that rock. So, fair play to the stunt guys in this. They really went all out for it. And I would have just assumed that'd be a digital Vader being thrown against a rock, but they did the real deal. And it was, it looks like a real set. Obviously, they have the volume around it and stuff, but someone was saying on Twitter recently that the show felt a bit flat. And I kind of agree with that. There's certain aspects of it where you can't see the seams, but you can feel the envelopment of the volume at times, I think. So some of the visual effects at times were not that they weren't up to scratch, but you could feel that it was, and it's hard, and I think I mentioned in the previous video, it's hard to not compare it to Stranger Things because they both came out at the same time, and Stranger Things has a lot of these, like in the Upside Down, it's just a completely, or mostly fabricated digital kind of thing, and it feels a lot more tangible and real. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, the duel with is really, it boils down to like the structure where he has Obi-Wan beaten, and Obi-Wan kind of fights out of it. Do it for her, do it for the kids, and he comes out. And he comes back swinging, and he beats Vader. He slashes open his mask, and we see that look at that visual of Hayden's face inside the mask, and the almost demented smile on his face that we can only just see the curl of his lip. And in a way, he kind of absolves Obi-Wan of all his guilt, and that's the story. And that's another thing that I was relieved about. That okay, there is a story that they're telling that is worth being told, which is Obi-Wan letting go of that kind of responsibility and guilt over what he did to Anakin, because he cuts his brother who he loved in half and leaves him to burn alive, and he's distraught about this. And then the next time he sees him in A New Hope, he's just like, Only a master of evil Darth. Like, there's no emotion there really. So I love that they kind of filled out this part of the story. And I was really hesitant about it and skeptical, but what they did with the story between these two, I thought was excellent. And when, he says to Obi-Wan, like, what was the actual line? I don't want to like mess it up, but I guess I'll just have to kind of, paraphrase, but he basically says something to the effect of, you didn't create Darth Vader, Obi-Wan, I did. And he's almost kind of proud of it when he says it because he's so far in the woods at this point. But I almost wonder, is there some decent part of Anakin still inside there that recognizes how guilty his former master feels and decides to, even subconsciously, absolve Obi-Wan of the guilt he's been carrying around, and at that point in time, Obi-Wan could probably kill him, but he doesn't because, he still loves him, and he's tears in his eyes, I'm so sorry, and I think he says, and then my friend is truly dead, which just reminded me of Luke saying, then my father is truly dead, and then he says, goodbye, Darth, and a few people were just like, oh, that was so lame. Why did he say Darth? When has he ever called him Darth? Like, it makes no sense that he would either call him Vader or Anakin. It's like, New Hope. Only a master of evil Darth. Like, he literally calls him Darth in the original movie. The source material from which all of this stems. Anyway. Just these complaints that are so baseless and just even a modicum of research would prove your point completely baseless. Anyway, so I loved the Anakin, Vader, and Obi-Wan stuff. I feel like, and then Reva, of course, and going to I didn't really, I felt like the fact that Luke had really no personality or lines in this, it was almost a bit too imbalanced because Leia had so much character and so much life to her, but at the same time, Leia has a lot of character to her in the first movie. Luke does not, so it's kind of fitting. Luke is very much the blank template with which, all the impressionable young people watching that film when it first came out, and for the last 45 years since, that's the hero's journey. That's the looking off into your future with a wide canvas in front of you in your life, and kind of, Harry Potter isn't really the most interesting of people when you really think about it, but it's an avatar for the viewer to kind of step inside and feel like they could go on that journey, because not to say that everyone in the audience is like characterless or not interesting, but it kind of makes it easy for pretty much anyone to kind of feel like they could be that character. So I understand, I guess, but it felt like in the show, Leia was so great and Luke was just kind of thrown in, for a little bit. But it gave some dramatic tension for Obi-Wan to come back, even though we know nothing would happen to Luke, and then Reva showing up and still injured, so it's actually, she didn't just shrug off the stabbing, she's still pretty fucked up. And then she chases Luke, but ultimately she doesn't really do anything. And we get to see a bit of Owen and Beru kind of being like, we're going to defend the boy, or Beru particularly being like, we're going to defend this kid and kind of protect his life. But Reva brings Luke back. He kind of fell over, he didn't really see much. And then Obi-Wan's there with Reva, and she says, like, have I become him? Am I a monster? And Obi-Wan's pretty much like, your future is now in your hands. It's your choice, kind of thing. It did feel to me, I mean, it's, some people have kind of hailed it as a really powerful moment. Some people talk about like redemption and how it's kind of a similar act of seeing the good in someone that Luke saw in Vader in the original trilogy, but it felt a little bit undercooked in terms of just the way she kind of goes to kill Luke and then decides not to. Because I mean, if she and we it's a nice moment when she's, well, not nice, but she's about to kill Luke, and then she sees herself lying there and realizes she can never do it because she's repeating the cycle. But the idea that, like, if she hadn't had that epiphany, then Luke would have been dead, like, easy. Obi-Wan didn't arrive in time. Owen and Beru didn't protect him well enough. So it's just one of those, yeah, okay. And then Obi-Wan's kind of like, yeah, well, cool, see ya, And then we have kind of a coda sequence where we just see Obi-Wan kind of, well, two really, well, not two, but like we get kind of the winding down of the story. And the first part is him going to see Leia back on Alderaan where she's safe, and he brings back Lola, the droid, for her. And this was probably my favorite scene of the whole series, when he kind of says, before you asked me if I knew your parents, your mother, your father. I can't remember if it was specifically her mother that she asked, did you know my mother or my father? But he says that, he implies that he knew her parents, and gives her this little speech of how, all of her, her qualities are the best qualities that came from her mother and her father. And it's a beautifully delivered and written kind of monologue that Ewan just nails, and it's really emotional. And then we get the Leia theme, and that was something that throughout the show, the music was good but never really super memorable, apart from the Obi-Wan theme, which was composed by John Williams and adapted for this show. And I love the Obi-Wan theme. It's a very mournful kind of fitting piece of music for that character at that point in time forward, I think, after Revenge of the Sith, and kind of has shades of I think I've already talked about this, has shades of the Luke Last Jedi Force Awakens theme, the kind of Jedi steps. It's kind of a regal, kind of mournful, bittersweet, melancholy piece of music. And I was thinking, like, are they going to use the main themes? But they brought back Leia's theme, which got me a bit misty-eyed, and it was just really nice to see them have that moment together. And my favorite kind of like, oh, that fits in nicely thing for this show is that Leia called her son Ben. It shows you that she remembered this, even if we don't really see them interact in the original trilogy. So that's cool. I like that, and I liked the chemistry between Ewan and the young actress Vivian, I think her name is. It was well done, and that scene was just really touching. And of course, he says to Leia, "No one can know about what happened because it would endanger us both." So that was really nice. Or actually, we also get the Vader the final Vader scene when he's back in his fortress on Mustafar, and I just love that throne he's got. It's this proper like metal, like it's like really cool. And then we see fucking Ian McDiarmid, and it was so cool to see the Emperor. It was basically the kind of scene I hoped to see in Rogue One, and they nailed his makeup. I mean, obviously it's a hologram, but you could really tell. And obviously he's more age appropriate now. He's like the perfect age for that character at that point in time. But like the sags into the eye, perfect. The way the robe fell on his face, perfect. It was great. And I have to give Ian McDiarmid all the credit in the world because, Liam Neeson. Liam Neeson was asked on some talk show, so Obi-Wan, you're going to be in the show? And he was sweating bullets. Like, you could tell that he was so nervous, and he was definitely in it. And then he like made some statement like, I'd only do it if it was for a movie on the big screen. And it was like, he's in the show. And then Ian McDiarmid at like Star Wars Celebration, like I think a few days before, I'm not sure if it was a few days before the final episode came, but it was close to like near that final 6th episode, and Ian McDiarmid was asked, do you think you'll come back as the Emperor at any point in a show or a movie? And he very convincingly said that, no, don't get your hopes up. Like, it's, and the way that he said it was like, it was really convincing. And I was like, well, yeah, I mean, Rise of Skywalker was a great place to end it for him, and I think you can have too much of a good thing. And I wasn't really expecting or even hoping for him to show up in Kenobi, even though it would have made sense. And it did make sense, and it was a nice little cameo, but he played that perfectly because he knew he was in the show, obviously. So that was great. He really preserved that surprise for me, and I was so happy to see him. It was nice. And, to see kind of a scene with Palpatine with James Earl Jones's voice, even if synthetically, was really cool. And then, he's like, Obi-Wan's nothing to me. I serve only you, my master. And then the Imperial March starts. And that's almost like Vader moving on. Now Vader's going to be like, as clinical as possible, and I think that's a really cool part of his character too. And then the Imperial March is almost like the signaling of like, now Vader's going to get into his groove. And I think that is actually confirmed to be the next Star Wars show that is in development, which is Darth Vader. How Darth Vader got his groove back. And Hayden will be back for that show as well, which is really cool. So that's pretty much... Oh no, of course, the final part of the series and episode is when Obi-Wan goes to see Owen and says, you know what, you're right. You're taking good care of him. I'm going to keep my distance. And Owen's like, all right, do you want to meet him? And I love Ewan's like expression when he's like, do you want to meet him? He's like, I don't mind if I do. You know, he goes over with the T-16 Skyhopper, is it, the toy? And hello there. I mean, it's just like they had to do it at some point, and save the best till last. And then finally we have the Qui-Gon scene, which is almost, it felt a bit unceremonious to me in the way it's kind of like, well, it was about time you showed up. I don't know. Like it was cool to see Qui-Gon. I really love his character in the Phantom Menace, and that's probably why it's my favorite prequel, because I love Liam Neeson in that film, and he's such a cool Jedi character. But if we see more, it would be nice to see how those two interact. Though I would want it to be sparing, not like Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon's ghost off on a crazy adventure, something like that. Yeah. So apparently, after the show came out, this story, this revisiting of the character of Obi-Wan Kenobi was initially planned as a film trilogy. This was brought to to Lucasfilm, to Kathleen Kennedy, to Ewan McGregor. They all agreed to it. They all thought it would be a good idea, and this series was apparently what the first movie was going to be. So they still have two more stories that they want to tell. And this was the original writer of the series who came out and told this to some I don't know, website, magazine. And they've kind of, it was a huge success, the most successful Disney Plus show I think ever. So they want to do some more. Ewan said he's really up for doing more. So I think they're probably going to do another series at least, if not two, to kind of do that arc, whatever they have planned. And one of my big nitpicky things was that they haven't grayed his hair that much. So maybe in a season 2, the hair will start getting grayer and it will really transition. But then if you get too close, then he's an Alec Guinness, right? Unless they do a season 3 where it's like Ewan McGregor doing the performance, but Alec Guinness's face deep faked. I mean, we get some crazy shit, which would be honestly awful if they did anything closely resembling that. But I could almost see it where they might kind of finish, this revisiting of the character with like a deep fake scene, maybe even recreate the Darth Maul duel. Who knows? I know fans would go crazy for that, but I think some things you just need to let lie. But it hints at more. Reva's still out there. I definitely think they shouldn't go back to Leia and Luke. I would love there to be minimal Tatooine stuff if it does happen. I would even really appreciate it if they left the Vader thing well alone as well, because I feel like that story was really well told. But then if you don't go to that, if you don't go to what is left for Obi-Wan to really struggle with, that's where I get stuck, is because this was a really good story to tell of him getting to a point where he is now the version we see in A New Hope, who isn't as kind of wrought with PTSD of what happened with Vader, But we'll see, I suppose, see what the future brings. Anyway, that was my thoughts on the show, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and the final 3 episodes. I keep saying the final, as if it was, again, split when it wasn't. I feel like it was a very all over the place review, but I wanted to get a video out there for it. Let me know your thoughts on the show down below, and what else you're looking for. I mean, I'm looking forward to Andor, because it's like it's a bit more fresh. Like, hopefully, if there's a scene on Tatooine in Andor, I'm gonna like put my fist through the tear. Like, enough Tatooine, please. I mean, I love Star Wars, but can we just please leave Tatooine in the dust for just one show, please? So that's my dream wish list for Andor. Just no Tatooine, and I'll be satisfied. I'm only partially joking. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.